many Christians are deconstructing from their faith. That means that they no longer simply take as absolute truth what they've been told by their parents or by their Sunday school teachers or by their church leaders. Instead, they go back to basic principles and look at the evidence that they can see. And then they decide on the basis of a careful look at that evidence, which, if any, of these teachings they can believe. Now, the evidence is really quite strong. Let's think of what the process is about. What they usually find from the evidence is that the basic facts of apostolic Christianity are actually true. Things like the resurrection of Jesus Christ, there's plenty of evidence. Even if you didn't have the Bible, you would know that Jesus rose from the dead if you looked for the evidence. There's lots of evidence that the Gospels are liable. But having gone then, you then find that many of the teachings of conventional Christianity don't come from the Bible, they're not scriptural, and they don't really work out. They don't seem to be true either. So people then start to think about leaving their churches. The other thing that tends to come out is that the political involvement of many churches doesn't fit a scriptural pattern, and that's also affecting people. And we're putting together a series of videos, it's quite an extended series, which is going to look at these issues and see what we can deduce from the evidence involving them. Why do people deconstruct? Well, the problem is that many of the teachings you get from conventional church Christianity aren't logically coherent. There are problems when you put them together. So here's an example. 3 teachings that are quite common among Christian churches. The first one, Jesus died for our sins. The second one, God is immortal. God is the living God. He doesn't die. And the third teaching you often get is that Jesus is God. But those 3 different teachings can't all be true at the same time. You'll see that for yourself. If Jesus is God and Jesus died for our sins, then God is not immortal. Or if Jesus died for our sins and God is immortal, Jesus is not God. You have to find if part of that is actually wrong. But many conventional churches teach all 3 of those things. So something has got to give. One of those teachings has got to be wrong, and that means that something that church is teaching must be wrong. And so what they do is they deconstruct. They go back to the basic evidence. They look at each of the bits individually and see what evidence is there to support that part of the church's teaching. Now, the kind of evidence you get, well, there are 2 levels of evidence. There's the foundation level, which is a basis on which everything else is built. And then there are the final teachings. So the foundation is the evidence of truth that you can then use to think about everything else. Things like the reliability of the Bible. If the Bible is reliable, then that gives us a bit of extra confidence in the teachings we're going to find. Did Jesus and the apostles say things that were true, or were they just mixed up? Is it rational to believe in God? That sort of thing. And you can look at general evidence and make a decision on those. And in general, they come out okay. The teaching is the conclusions that are then drawn from that evidence. Things like, what's God like? Is God a Trinity? Is God the one God? Is God one God who is one person? Is Jesus God? What happens to us when we die? What should we do in order to be saved? Those kind of questions, they come up from the evidence that we found in the bottom level on this slide. And the method that we use is to take a very detailed look at what there is. We take a microscopic look at the Bible, we put it under the microscope and say, what does it teach? And the conclusions we're going to come up with, well, first of all is the question, can we trust the Bible? Secondly, there's the question of what does it teach? And those conclusions that we get from those have to be based on hard evidence. And we have to take a radical look at that evidence. That means it's a look which doesn't simply say, does our church's view on that evidence hold water? We want to look and see, where does that evidence really take us? It's a look which is based only on the evidence and on a rational look at it. We aren't constrained by what the church would like us to think. And then we have to make a rational analysis of that evidence. In other words, we have to look at the evidence, say what it really says, and then use logic so that we can show a rigorous set of conclusions that come from that evidence. And again, that's what the series that we're putting together is going to talk about. So it's a coming series on Gospel Online. It's going to have more than 20 episodes if things go well. I put Christianity under the microscope. We look at the fundamental issues. We look calmly and rationally. We're not going to be swayed by the emotional push that we might have. And we're going to see what those areas have in terms of the truth and the evidence. And our aim is to help to examine the faith, to look deeply and rationally at the things that perhaps we should or shouldn't believe. So look out for this series, look out for other videos on the channel, look on the website, see what it says, because that will give more information about this series. And if you want to follow the series, subscribe to the channel and possibly hit the notify so that you can get the videos as they come in, because they're starting soon.